Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades, happy Wednesday, October the 30th, the day before Halloween, year of our Lord, 2024. The Vatican has unveiled the official mascot of the holy year, 2025. And guess what? It's not so holy. It is essentially a Funko Pop, an anime Funko Pop called Luce, or Luce, Italian for light. Archbishop Fisichella says the mascot was inspired by the church's desire, quote, to live even within the pop culture so beloved by our youth. So they introduced this retarded Funko Pop called Luce with holding a stang or something. Blue-haired, large-eyed. It's Japanese art for little girls. Now that's bad optics at the beginning, right? Because the church prelates have been often accused, too often they've been accused credibly of being like groomers, and now they're making little girl art. And usually they're accused of grooming little boys. But it's worse than bad optics, because when one has a look at the author of Luce, who has a company called Tokidoki, it is a pride celebrator. There's something called Dragon Girl under its banner, and it seems to be a full-on groomer campaign. Really, really, really bad stuff. Worse than just the worst optics that I thought it might represent on Monday. So I'm going to give you a little run through who is this author behind Tokidoki. Also a Zodiac series. Do we have that picture?
I'll get that up.
Does a Zodiac series of astrology. So once again, the Vatican has the vast array, the panoply of world artists who would love to have their art displayed. And they pick this shitty, campy, kitschy bullshit that represents pride and zodiac signs. I mean, the art itself stands for Pride Month, for zodiac signs, more or less thinly or thickly for groomers. And there are defenders of this kitschy bullshit out there, as always. Look, everyone with eyes to see is just groaning out. When will we be delivered of this nonsense, Lord? But there will always be defenders of evil, or in this case, just kitsch, or just filth. So the defenders are saying things like, well, this is fun. They have a very gay idea of what is fun. I mean, there are all kinds of campy, nonsensical, smutty ideas that have been interchanged for the concept of fun throughout human history. Look at the filthy cities of the world. Look at Las Vegas. Look at Corinth. Look at Sodom or Gomorrah. So anime is being called fun for guys, generally speaking, who struggle to get a woman's attention. And this is the strongest defense that is being put out there, because now it's in the pop culture and people are banding back and forth about this, the way the Vatican wanted it to go. And the strongest defense is, well, it might be a pride company. It might be a Japanese anime company. I mean, the church is European. It's universal, but you have a European white guy, a prelate, coming out there, and he's presenting Japanese art. For all these kids out there that are defending it, let's get European white art. The way the church has a great history, an unblemished history through the Middle Ages of getting the best of the European painters. Think about Raphael. I'm thinking about the Four Stanze in the Raphael room in the Vatican. And obviously, contrast it to Tokidoki and Luce, and it's res ipsa loquitur. You don't have to be a great appreciator of historical art to understand the comical and even tragic dichotomy presented by how far the human dimension of the church has fallen, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to desecrate the sacredness of the human dimension of the church. And even, of course, in the composite nature of the church, the divine elements of the church, insofar as they can. But they can't touch that. What they can really do is take the lofty, ethereal, human sentiments that have co-attended ecclesiology and the concept of having a church that's both human and divine, and tear them down from their cloud with pedo-groomer art. And it's really been a groomers and what I've seen online, Zoomers tag team effort to defend this kitschy megma. And of course, they know what they're doing. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to give you an up close on what Tokidoki is, what their Zodiac series looks like, what their Happy Pride Month looks like, and basically just give you a sense of who this guy is. Tomorrow's Halloween. One of my favorite holidays. It represents something called the Hallowtide. Remember, don't forget tomorrow, in this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant fallen regime, how based a holiday Halloween is. We are the church, the one true church, where if a saint dies, we want to hack off his finger or his thumb. It's very metal, and we've always been that way. We are the church that has a autumnal triduum called the Hallowtide of All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, All Souls Day, that I think Pope Gregory moved from the spring, the gayest and the boringest time of the year, to autumn, the most pregnant, the most suspenseful, magical time of the year, when it makes the most sense to be celebrating death, because it's a portal to either salvation or damnation. And that he gave us, Pope Gregory gave us the Hallowtide. I think it's Pope Gregory. It's based. It happened in the 700s. It's so cool. And of course, I live in the reddest state of all. I got out of my blue state. I got to a red state, which is what you should do using realestateforlife.org. And it's a great place. Most conservative state, most Christian state. Unfortunately, it's very Baptist, and these people are very mixed up on things like the saints, on the afterlife, on the nature of death, on memento mori, on scary, spooky creatures. They think these are evil. If I used to have a skull on the desk, I have a skull behind me. Remember, the logo for the show is a Capuchin monk who says, in English, I'll transliterate the Latin, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you soon will be." That's based. That's very, very metal. Roman Catholicism is very, very metal. And remember this in Pride tomorrow, on not that kind of Pride, tomorrow on Halloween, all day long. I hope you and your kids dress as something really spooky, and you at least set out the skull on your desk for one day of the week. One day of the week. One day of the year, at the very least. If you don't have a skull in your workspace, the way St. Augustine and St. Jerome did, and many of the great fathers, then at least do it this one day of the year, because it's very, very based. So this is just a little plug for Halloween. I just love Halloween, and I think you should too. Tonight is one of the last classes of our marital workshop, One Flesh, corresponding with this book, Leave and Cleave, my 5th book, co-written with Steph. What I want to offer you guys is you can get in the class and go review the first 7 courses. You don't really need them in order. Once you get in a live class, you get access to all the old ones, and you can watch them anytime. That's on timothyjgordon.com. We also have a Revelation course on the apocalypse that's ongoing with Mr. Andrew Orozco. I'm also teaching an Aristotle class on Tuesday nights, the ethics. So if you go over to timothyjgordon.com and you're thinking, what can I do? The Vatican is so skittles. The people running the church for almost 100 years are just groomers. Well, that doesn't mean the church is. It just means we've had wicked leaders for some time now. What can you do? Pull your kids out of Catholic school, homeschool them, teach them what you can. There are now nearly 20 classes that are going to be up in the registry on Retrograde Classical Academy on timothyjgordon.com. And you can use these courses to augment your homeschool. I also give a short course on how to homeschool. It's much easier than you think, much less stressful than you're assuming. Do that today. And the newest thing up on Timothy J. Gordon that we're really excited about is our coaching program. We're coaching lots of couples out there. This is more intensive for people that wanted more than just the class. Go to timothyjgordon.com. And do, between November, which is basically upon us, and January, whatever fresh hell wakens in the space of these 2.5 months, try to get out of your blue state and get to a red state today. Go to realestateforlife.org. Like this video, subscribe. If you want to support, locals is the way to do it. We need support. We need help. If you want to give a private donation, if you know Abby's backstory, lots of people ask about that. That's on timothyjgordon.com. That's donate. But if you want to support the show or the books, use locals to do so. Also, if you're watching the vid, please subscribe to the channel. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 subscribers. Toki dokie. Let's move on.
Toki.
Let's get on to it. So people are saying this is not groomer propaganda. Old men, now let's see. We have I just want to drop the context here. We have a pope who covered up for groomer Uncle Ted McCarrick, who and most people out there that are defending Luce, the groomer art for pedos, don't even know this torrid history. We have a current pontiff who, after our previous pontificate, his predecessor, Pope Benedict, had taken this actual groomer, Theodore McCarrick, most powerful cardinal in the world, out of action and put him into a quiet prayer of penance for molesting several young men. Our current pontiff took him out of his seclusion, put him back in charge of a seminary, lied about it later, and took no accountability for the fact that he basically gave him access to men, to young men. That's the pontiff. After running through several doctrinal chief number twos, Francis finally landed on Cardinal Tucho Fernandez, the number 2 in the church, number 2, who earlier in life published a book talking about how to French kiss and teaching grosser stuff than just that to young boys and girls, with pictured 7 and 8-year-olds that he wants to teach how to French kiss. I've read excerpts from that recently, so I'm not going to run through it now. The power contingent that gave us Francis, called the St. Gallen Mafia, is also called the Lavender Mafia. You can use your imagination why. The Pontifical Academy for Life under Pope Francis, instantiated by John Paul II in the 1980s, has been overrun by abortionists and LMNOPQ lobby. They also overthrew his sex ed program with perverted groomer, essentially pro-pedo pedagogy. This story broke in 2017. Vincenzo Paglia runs the Pontifical Academy for Life and its pedagogical efforts. And he has a huge, torrid, disgusting groomer LMNOP history. Who else? Oh, Timothy Radcliffe, who is being elevated, the most prominent of all of the cardinals being elevated at this 10th consistory coming up in about a month. December the 7th, he'll be made a cardinal. He used to be in charge of the Dominicans, which there's so many based Dominicans, you think they're based. He's going to be one of the power men in the Vatican once he becomes a cardinal. He was one of the power men at this last synod, which just closed 2 days ago. Father Timothy Radcliffe, also a huge advocate for the Lavender Mafia, and he's pushed very, very hard this line in the synodal teaching that we need to emphasize the positive elements of sod, laying sod. Yes, I'm talking about grass. of LMNOPQ relationships. The most important priest who's not a prelate in America, at least to the dear heart of Francis, is Father James Martin, who gave us the article which really formed the backbone of Monday's episode of Rules for Retrogrades. He was saying, here's what's really happening, here's what's coming. There's no longer any significant pushback after, the 2 or 3 years of synodalism to the LMNOPQ agenda under Pope Francis's pontificate. Francis is favored. Francis, remember, met with a bunch of groomers during the synod. And every year at the...
I have a picture on right now. Remember that old synod picture? That other Vatican art that was just gross with like Jesus having his feet washed by all of the LMNOPQRS community? I have that on the screen right now. So they have a track record of just like pushing out this.
I was just going there.
Disgusting
That's
art.
just where I was going. There's, can I?
I have it on screen.
Yeah. So the groomer art has a long, torrid 12-year history under this pontificate. And even at the USCCB, every year they feature the art of a famous groomer that puts Jesus in sexually compromised positions. There's just tons of gross stuff. The same Tucho Fernandez has described in print young girls' sexual fantasies of our Lord. I can't even say this stuff. I can't even say it. This is a Vatican that is riddled with, from the top down, from the Pope down to his dearest buddies there, his lieutenants, his homeboys. It is riddled with LMNOPQ propaganda and an attempt to change the existing irreformable doctrine on LMNOPQ. And that's what this synod was about, along with giving us deacons under the pirate flag of gender dysphoria, women who think they're men. Those are the two big goals, and they are in the offing. So into all this backdrop is thrown this groomer art presented by Fisichella.
That's at the bottom of the screen, right?
Is that at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah,
okay, so you guys can look at that. This guy also has a series called Dragon Girl. Dragon Girl, which is essentially a XXX art. So, and we're not talking about this guy has in his private life, one time he jaywalked or okie dokie. I'm reading Robert Nugent online. He, in his art, represents pornography, Japanime, Happy Pride Month art, and it's all this pathetic kind of Funko Pop stuff that little Japanese girls like. If you know Hello Kitty, there's a portion of the, I guess, younger population that like little girl art. They don't like girls. They haven't, approached a woman ever in person. Did you know the statistic? It's like 47% of 24-year-old men have never approached a girl in person. So these are I hate saying incel because that's something the left says. So I'm just going to say pathetic, young, ego-crushed men, sexually frustrated men who are playing with like little girl dolls, Funko Pops, a literal little girl doll. Grown-ass men that have never asked a girl out. Instead, they play with little girl dolls. They've never thrown a punch. They've never been punched because they avoid all adversarial conflict, IRL. And I've always said, hey, there's such a healthy moment in what's going on in the young church among the young Zoomer trads. But there's this pushback, an angry kind of pushback that doesn't like it's really a boomer and Zoomer team up, right? They like the new mass.
Like kitschy, bad taste.
They like the shitty art. It's a boomer Zoomer team up. They like the shitty new mass, the Novus Ordo. They like the shitty rock, like Monkees/Beatles rock music played at Mass. They like, evidently, the fact that Francis and all of his lieutenants are open-minded and modernist. I guess they like the Lavender Mafia because they never critique it. They like what the boomers did to the church. They evidently have no problem with the reification of the church. The altars being, beautiful altars being torn out of churches in the 70s. I mean, a lot of times they might not even know. That's the thing. You assume with these people that they don't necessarily even know what was happening before 2020 or something like that. So I guess the defenders of the Tokidoki have just either no clue or they approve of the reification of the church, the destruction of the altars, the destruction of the church's patrimony, the desecration that was planned out as far back as the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita. And they're just kind of like Protestants. They think this is what it is to be Catholic. They've been raised in filthy fish water, and they just assume, hey, this is what it is. You know, you have basically a groomer, you know, top of the pyramid in the Curia. Basically, the Pope and all of his men, all his fun boys, are all Lavender Mafia. And they're just like, this is, look, I defend the church. I guess this is what it is to be Catholic. But it's like Chesterton said about the Protestants. To read history is to become Catholic. To read Catholic history is to learn how based and manly Roman Catholicism is. It's literally to learn how based and manly Catholicism is. The church was never for pontiffs who ran the church and gave shitty little girl dolls as the highest instance of the church's patrimonial art. That's absurd. This is the church of the Pietà, the disputation of the Eucharist, the defenders of the Eucharist, some of my favorite art ever. And then you put this pathetic Funko Pop alongside that. It's a joke. And the people defending it, in the case of maybe boomers, they just know, and they're, I don't know. It's a hard phenomenon to account for. Why they would defend such filth, such bile. But with Zoomers, it's just like the ones, you know, they've been in the church for a couple of years. They don't really know that the church has been this beautiful, based, truly manly institution for 2 millennia now, until around the time of the Second Vatican Council. They don't know any of that. They just think, hey, Happy Pride Month is part of being Catholic. This Vatican artist that loves pride, that loves and is seeking at all turns to find the positive elements of LMNOP. And here's what they're saying. They're saying we don't judge art by the immorality of the artist. Of course not. We judge the art by the artist, by the artistry itself. We don't have little girl dolls as art in the Roman Catholic Church. As a simple matter of fact, I get now that there are 24-year-olds that instead of approaching women, or you know, I won't say fighting in wars because all of our foreign wars have basically been a sham. But
God help us if we need these 24s to help us fight in war.
We don't, because foreign wars are usually a sham. But they and you know that start going in a boomer direction there. But just how about when you're 16, 17, 18, start talking to girls so that you can pluck out the best one for you. Start a family when you graduate high school. Start having kids, and make your family the holiest and the best sanctuary against the onslaught of the filthy modern world as you can, and get them all to heaven. That's what you're supposed to be doing when you're 18, 19, 20. 17, 18, 19, 20. Instead, we have men who have, I guess, technically they're straight, but they're really practically largely asexual if half of them have never approached a girl in real life. They live online. They play with little girl dolls. I mean, there's literally a little girl doll. And this is historically unprecedented as it's being passed off by the church. The church has never taken a little girl toy and said that this is the highest instance of our art. The church has given us the Disputation of the Eucharist. Can we get that on screen? The Disputation of the Eucharist by Raphael.
People are saying that this is just for kids.
No, it's for the year. No, this is how it works. So that's idiots that don't know the history. When we have a Jubilee year, there is all, and this is very, very old. This started at latest 1 millennium into the church. We started having officially promulgated Jubilee years. There's an official theme. There's official art that corresponds with it. This is not something that they just came up with yesterday in the lame internet era. So having a Jubilee year that corresponds with a certain piece of art and a certain leitmotif and a certain theme and some special focal point of the Christian life and Christian patrimony is very, very old. And so when you put out little, like, I don't know, Barney the dinosaur, and this is even gayer than Barney the dinosaur, this is little girl art, for everyone in the church in a Jubilee year, you can't later turn around and say, well, this is a very narrowly tailored attempt to evangelize little Japanese girls who like Hello Kitty, together with young men who are too afraid to approach a woman. So that's historically decontextualized, same as all the other defenses of, well, it's very Catholic to have, pedo groomer art, little kid art passed off in the Vatican Museum. What, are they going to put this shit in the Vatican Museum? One of the Raphael Stanze rooms? Really? So it doesn't suffice to say, well, you're judging, Tim, you're wrong because you're judging the art by the artist. No, never judge the art by the artist. Don't do it with Michelangelo. Don't do it with Raphael. Don't do it with Caravaggio. I mean, look, I've been to Rome. I've lived in Rome. I've attended pontifical schools, right? I've attended several pontifical masses. I've been to the underground secret complex of Opus Dei. Not that I am associated with Opus Dei in any way, but I've been deep underground at the seat of the Opus Dei ministry there in Rome. I've done it all. And these guys that are new to the church assume, oh, well, this is historically contextualized. It's not. It's just not. It's just a fact that this is new. It's novel in a what was formal. I mean, it was novel 5-10 years ago, but it's novel in a horrifying way. It's novel in a horrifying way. It's bad.
Do you want to address people saying, like, oh, just because it's not like Crusader art?
Crusader art is also sort of a LARP, as I've said countless times. I've said it countless times that the Crusader art is, the Crusades are cool and defensible, as is the Spanish Inquisition. But so I don't like Crusader art now. That's also sort of decontextualized.
I have the Disputation of the Eucharist up.
Yeah, let's see that. So I have this up in my dining room. Are you saying that this goes alongside that work of genius? By the way, the Disputation has meaning in every square centimeter.
Well, Luce's green means pilgrimage, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah, little girl dolls for spineless young men that grew without fathers, that grew up on the internet, never thrown a punch, never asked out a girl, never stood for anything under their own face and name. This is the equivalent of that? Or the defenders of the Eucharist? No, how about we just get back to holy images? Because the Crusaders themselves, many of them were holy men, but I don't need images of Crusaders. Ask any trad. I'm not really properly considered a trad. I've just always hated the Novus Ordo and loved the Latin Mass and want to go back in several ways. But I've also been that guy that stuck his neck out when traditionalism was really catching, and part of the thing that made it catch in 18, 19, 20, where I said, well, we don't want to LARP. We don't want to LARP. We also don't want to be disobedient. There's a fine line. What I'm standing for is neither LARPing nor disobedience. I'm just saying we really don't need groomer little girl art standing for the entire Jubilee year of 2025. Also, I would remind you, with all of the ostensible evangelical and ecumenical fervor that is being claimed Luce stands for, that it is being promulgated by a pope and a doctrinal chief who called it at least a dozen times a mortal sin to try to convince others of the faith intellectually. Direct quote. To try to convince others of other faiths of the truth of the one true faith is a mortal fucking sin. That's not part of the direct quote. It's a mortal sin. They don't want to evangelize anybody, and no one's evangelized by this. Unless you want, little Japanese girls in the church. Is that really the focal point of our evangelical efforts? Well, no. There are no evangelical efforts under Pope Francis because he thinks it's a mortal sin. He also thinks that, and this is not the same misattribution that trads will make with some of the Vatican II documents, where some of the Vatican II documents, two of them I have specifically in mind, sound like they're saying that Hinduism or Jainism or Buddhism really, really are the true religion, but they don't say that. There's a kind of use-mention distinction at work within those documents. It's a close call, but very clearly textually those documents say the Buddhists think they can do this. The Hindus claim that they can do this. That's different from saying they actually can do it. My uncle Remus thinks he can flap his arms and fly to the sun. That's different from me endorsing the notion that he actually can pull it off. Pope Francis in Singapore 2 weeks ago literally said that Hinduism worships the same God as us, the one true God, even though it has over 20 million gods, and they're all demons. So we already know that the paltry, see-through, threadbare, pathetic excuse for circulating shit groomer art for pedos is disingenuous if it's given as evangelization, because we currently have a pontiff and a number two in the church that fervently believe that evangelization is a mortal sin. Circulated many times, sometimes using the verb proselytize, other times outright evangelize, other times a kind of infinitive version of those verbs, which is more explicit and therefore more satisfying, to convince others intellectually of the faith. So we're not trying to convince anyone, little Japanese girls, of the faith, even though that's being offered as, I guess, the least bad of a litany of bad reasons why this might be true. Happy Pride Month. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. And it's weird. It's Zoomers who I'm seeing online defending it, who are taking a boomer approach to ecclesiology. And it's unfortunate because there's so much. Well, there was a while in 2018, 2019, 2020, a lot of really cool, manly fire that was coming out of that younger generation. The ones that were like, this is cool. They saw Ian Taylor Marshall's show on his channel, TNT, and they're like, wow, I didn't know what the Latin Mass was. So I think the older Zoomers who came around to the church, who came back to the church because it was a Latin Mass, and people were really reconnecting with that after the Summer of Shame, after the McCarrick Summer, when Pope Francis was covering for a groomer back then, really August, July of 2018. They seem to be with us and all the sane people in the church. But the younger Zoomers, maybe it's even Generation Alpha. Maybe we're seeing a lot of Anons on Twitter who are more like 14, 15, 16, who are not even Zoomers. I think they're technically Generation Alpha, the next generation. And maybe some younger Zoomers, they seem to have gone the way of the boomer, defending the reification and all of the modernism and all of the grisly, macabre smegma that this Vatican's putting out. Yeah.
It's insulting to the church because people in chat are like, well, what's the problem with this anime character?
That it's shit.
It's insulting because it stands in replace of things that are actually beautiful and European and timeless about the church that actually do draw a deeper meaning of what our church stands for. And instead, we've propped up this chintzy cartoon girl that stands what our church stands for in a million ways, these deep thoughts, these beautiful notions about our church. And instead, we have this like cartoon child that's standing for all of that.
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh, I'm converting to the church because of this. It's like, are you
well, that's
IQ?
That
what?
No one's saying that honestly. All right, that's not because remember, if you convert intellectually, if some current Catholic were to convert some present non-Catholic by any use of the moral imagination, that is to say intellectually, I know a lot of people out there don't understand the epistemology of Francis's anti-evangelicalism, but what he's really saying is that would be a mortal sin. If there's not a single soul out there in the last 24 or 36 hours that converted to Roman Catholicism because of this Japanime groomer tchotchke, right? This little girl doll. No one has, so those people are just lying. But if they had, then the Pope who circulated such groomer art would actually think that he just contributed formal cooperation with a mortal sin.
It's so weird to me.
So there's not a consistent theme.
People in chat are saying like, but I like this art or I like cartoons. Guys, I like Chuck E. Cheese, but it doesn't necessarily need to be mingled in as a mascot. Like Charles Entertainment Cheese does not need to be like the Jubilee mascot. I also like, I don't know,
Pizza. I love
scary movies. Like I really like
Michael Myers movies.
Beatrix Potter, Peter Rabbit, awesome. I love him too. But
it's not
it does
appropriate.
not need to be mingled in with the church art. It's so.
And the fact that this needs to be explained to young adults, but adults all the same, shows the whole problem. If you have to ask, you'll never know. If we made Chuck E. Cheese, who is literally no more ridiculous as a mascot for the church, Charles Entertainment Cheese, if he were to be made the mascot for the entire Jubilee year of 2025, and people were out there defending that. Well, people like Chuck E. Cheese. Isn't pizza fun? Yes. I mean, marital sex is fun too. That doesn't mean it's appropriate in all fora. If you're in the forum where it's appropriate, and this really is what porn is. Pornographication is to strip something of its context and to put it into an inappropriate context, whereupon now all of a sudden it's grossly immoral. The reason we're saying Luce is grossly immoral, and again, the fact that if you have to ask, you'll never know, isn't because I'm saying that no one can be Catholic and play with anime dolls. I'm saying you probably aren't straight if you're playing with little girl dolls and you're a man, but you could still be, or you might be SSA. You might have a problem, but that doesn't mean you can't be Catholic, right? As long as you're not practicing Homo sapien. But I'm saying it's not due as a, it can't be made to stand for the proposition of Roman Catholicism without decontextualizing something deep and profound about our patrimony. That's what I'm saying. And if you have to ask, you'll never know. Chuck E. Cheese is fun. We take our kids there when they've had a good couple homeschool weeks in a row. It's not appropriate. Charles Entertainment Cheese is not appropriate as the mascot for the Roman Church on earth, God's people of Israel. This is a profound matter. And I'm sorry if no one has ever explained this to you. I'm sorry, young men out there, if you didn't have fathers. I'm sorry if you never learned to throw a punch, you never played a sport, you've never been tackled, you've never really confronted anyone aside from online. And you know that I'm describing accurately the contingent of folks, aside from the baby boomers who probably came up with this deuced idea. I'm talking about the young Zoomers who went for it. A lot of fatherlessness there. A lot of absconding fathers can be said etiologically to account for people defending this little girl tchotchke doll being made to stand for the entire Roman Church in the year of 2025. And the fact that people are like, well, why can't this be taken seriously? How about this? Remember when Xerox machines were new and someone would just sit on them and it would be a picture of their ass? Why couldn't that stand? Because that's not immoral, by the way. Your butt, your literal butt, parish orphans and retrogrades, is not immoral. It's not a more immoral organ than your elbow or your larynx. A butt is not wrong to have. Most people have one. And God created it, and it's natural. And some people have fun making butt jokes. A lot of current men who are in the Curia have a lot of fun with butts. And it's fun. So can that be made to stand as the proposition for all of the year, the Jubilee year of 2025? No, and the point is, if those in power currently decided to try to make a Xeroxed butt print the symbol of the Jubilee year of 2025,
that would be an improvement.
People would be right to say this is not, it's not immoral, and lots of people have fun making fun of butts and making butt jokes, scatological humor. A lot of SSA men would have fun in the sense of morose delectation with a high regard for butts. They're having fun, but it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate as the thing that mediates our sense of. I mean, think of what is it? Constantinople 2. Is it 2 or 3? Constantinople 2 or 3? Where's Andrew around when I need him? Where, remember the iconoclasts who said, well, praying to an icon is evil because you're worshiping an idol. And the church's response was no, to God through the icon. And the icon should be holy. There were standards that were set out for icons. That they should be holy. They should be an accurate mediation of the. I know a lot of people don't understand the epistemology, but I'm just trying to break it down. I'm doing my best. The epistemology goes like this. The image should help us to form what's called phantasms in our mind, representations in our mind of what our Lord Jesus, who was a real man incarnate, looked like, and kind of how he acted and maybe moved, if possible, and his mother, and the greatest of the saints, and the desert fathers. We don't really even know what a desert father would have been dressed like or what he ate. They've been very, very thin. I'm thinking of Anthony the Great, Anthony the Abbot. So what we want is not a modern representation of these ancient people. We want as close a representation, as faithful a representation of these ancient people. I mean, especially the God-man himself. To represent it. And so is this Constantinople 2 or 3? I'm embarrassing myself now. I can't remember if it's Council 6 or Council 7, where we said, no, images are good and they're not idols if they're faithful. Now, this Luce or Lupe, whatever it's called, is not a faithful representation of anything other than anime art, which does not represent something holy or good. It's a secular little girl doll that is made to stand for no holiness. And people are saying, well, it's not evil. Well, no, but you don't get the benefit of Catholic arguments in favor of holy statuaries. overlain over, something that's utterly secular, and does seem to represent a really weird attempt to vulgarize the the long line of Vatican art. And if you have to ask, you don't get it. It's fine, and it's more economical and it's more efficient to say, look, if you have to ask, you'll never know. Justice Jackson or White said, regarding pornography, I'll know it when I see it. I'm not saying this is pornographic insofar as there's a naked anime, which is what most of it is. But it's got clothes on. This weird little thing holding a stang. Weird little girl doll holding a stang. But it certainly, I know it's not holy. I know holiness when I see it. I know a crappy worldly tchotchke when I see it. And that's what people are upset about. It's not that I don't know what anime is. It's that I do know what anime is. I'm not a partaker, right? When I was young, look, when I was 20 and 21, I was currently, when I was 20, just turned 20, I met my wife, and I was working on, and I was dating lots of other girls, but I met my wife, and as I was dating the other girls, I was really working it out slowly in my mind. I'm dating other people. My wife is dating someone else. I mean, she wasn't my wife back then, but I was working it out. Like, my time and attention really was affixed there. That's a good thing for a young man to do. I wish we'd have met when I was 17 and we could have gotten married when I was 18. I'd have a couple more kids. That's the only thing I get greedy for. Couple more kids. But I think it's safe to say that when you miss because there is a teleology to the human body. When you miss your window, if you're 24 or 25 and you haven't even begun working out the things that young men are sort of, their psychology, their neurology is geared teleologically beautifully to work out. I really need to try to be married by the time I'm 24. I got married when I was 24, but it took a couple years because I was dating other girls and my wife was dating someone else, and we were becoming friends. And I was like, I need to learn the art, and I knew it pretty well because I was getting in fights. I'm not saying that was good, but it does gear men up to be confrontational creatures, IRL. And so I certainly had nothing approaching a perfect youth. And I'm not saying I'm the model that all men should use, but men do need to, maybe with a holier backdrop, a holier intentionality, approach learning to be confrontational. And then they won't be so offended when someone says, look, maybe instead of spending your time looking at anime or whatever it is, playing with Hello Kitty backpacks or whatever you do, playing with little girl dolls, literally, maybe you should get off the internet, log off, and go find a woman to make your own and to call your own for the rest of your life. So that's teleology. That's proper anthropology. And I'm certainly not the perfect iteration of it. I'm not offering that. I'm saying in an imperfect way. I'm trying to have an honest moment. What everyone's objecting to, that these Generation Alpha and maybe younger Zoomers are just not understanding. They're like, it's so boomerish to not like what's really fun for us. No, but some fun is negative. If you're playing video games, which I play video games with my family. I'm not anti-video game. I'm always defending video games. Don't slur the video game. But if you're playing video games 8 hours a day, or you're watching Japanime, or, whatever, collecting Hello Kitty backpacks many hours a day, and you've never approached a woman by the time you're 24. I started doing this when I was 14, 15, literally 10 years before. It's going to take years to work out your approach. It's going to take years to find the right girl. You are looking at a lifetime of solitude, and that's really sad. The principle of scarcity being what it is, the principle of the opportunity cost being what it is. There are only 24 hours in a day. There are only 365 days in a year. You see? So if you're 24 and not married, I was married by your age, then perhaps playing with little kitty dolls is what's called in the Catholic moral tradition a conditional evil because of the law of scarcity, irrespective of any of the. We don't even. I see how I haven't even mentioned much the evil Pride Month artist. I'm talking about the art itself is standing for something that's conditional evil. It doesn't have to be what's called a malum in se, a categorical evil, for us to condemn it. We know that this is one of these accidentally, conditionally evils that is evil almost all the time, at least in the context of those who I see defending it. Men who are in looks like a state of arrested development. You blame technology, specifically the internet and misused video games, for the opportunity cost of the lack of family in these people's lives. I mean family that they're supposed to go out and find with one woman and create in holy matrimony. And they didn't do it, let's be honest, because there's a crisis masculinity and there is a problem of absconding fathers, which are really kind of a redundancy. A crisis of masculinity caused by the fact that there are absconding fathers that never taught these young men. Now it's like higher out of wedlock birth rates than ever before in America. Never taught them to throw a punch or to play a sport, how to throw a ball, which is why they're also really, really angry about anybody that ever excelled at basketball or baseball or football. They're really mad about it. And they were nerds and probably picked on in school and crafted an alternative identity online, which is what a lot of this is about. And what I'm trying to offer is you don't have to do my program, my coaching program, or take my class on how to meet a girl and get married. You don't have to watch Christian Masculinism, though everyone should also subscribe to that channel on Friday mornings. We have a podcast once a week, Christian Masculinism. If you don't like me, that's fine. But I'm trying to offer something real here rather than just poke fun. Sometimes I can just poke fun and that's the show. There's something real here. God created, the Catholic God, the one true God, created us to be married and having children by the time that we're 21, 22. You know, a woman has already lost like 80% of the eggs that she'll ever have by 22. You know, she's old. She's an old maid by 24. I married my wife when I was 24. She was 23. We would have been married 2 years sooner if we didn't kind of have to work out some things because we were in the same friend group and you know, we were slowly falling in love with each other, but we each had other attachments. I wish I was 24 and she was 21. That's a bit more in conjunction with the inarguable teleology that the body bears out, that the body professes about what God wants us to be doing around the time we graduate high school. Get married. Hey, hey, Paul. Hey, hey, Paula. Remember that old song? I want to marry you. I can't wait for school to be through so that I can marry you. And they're not talking about college or grad school or med school or business school. They're talking about high school. At 18, hopefully you've met your spouse and you maybe get married that summer. This is what I'm trying to return people to. And I certainly don't hate all online activity because that's what I do now.
We like fun. I mean, I love the Ninja Turtles. I love like those things. That doesn't necessarily need to be a church mascot.
Yeah. Leonardo, Michelangelo.
We love, our generation loves anime. We love Dragon Ball Z. It's like that.
I literally have, I never read comic books, but I like basketball and football cards. I have some framed TMNT comics, some of the older ones. I just got into that recently. I've never opened a comic book and read it, but I think it's cool to have some of the older TMNT comics. I just think it's dope. I'm not on the other side of this, except insofar as I'm saying it's inappropriate to and I take my kids. I've probably been to Chuck E. Cheese more recent than most of the people that disagree with me out there have. Been to Chuck E. Cheese about a month ago because I take my kids there. I'll watch that there are like 20 versions of TMNT now. I like most of them. Still one of my favorite movies. We have a lot of fun. I mean, I shoot hoops out in my driveway for 1 to 2 hours every day. Pretty much every day of my life, unless I'm ill or under the weather or something. That's fun. It wouldn't be appropriate to have a basketball for the symbol or a football card. You know? I mean, did you know that the Honus Wagner card, if it's even graded like PSA 5, that thing's worth $3 million. It's sought after. It's amazing. I don't even like baseball. I never have. But Mickey Mantle's 1952 Topps card, I hate the sport of baseball. Is worth $1 million if it's graded PSA 7 or above. That stuff's fun to me. It's not appropriate as a church, you know, an official universal church symbol. It's just not. That's all we're saying. So, I mean, maybe does this represent back out? I mean, it is a literal little girl doll, which is a weird concept. Maybe there's a generational sort of lost in translation moment here. It's a weird concept for me to consider a little girl like tchotchke, like Funko Pop.
It would creep me
as
out.
a boy thing, but we can disagree about that, I guess. It just shouldn't. What we shouldn't be disagreeing about is that it's a universal, one holy Catholic apostolic symbol. That's just not disagreeable.
It would creep me out if you liked this. Like, I can't imagine women watching these men talking about how they like this little girl cartoon and they're not immediately turned off. Like, that's so, it's just so weird.
Yeah, but I'll say this. Look, I'll say this. I'm not trying to backpedal here. I'm just saying, getting married and young and starting a family young doesn't mean you give up everything you like, right? If it's a set piece, if there's a whole suite of weird groomer shit you're into, young men, and you get married when you're 21, 22, 23, 24, you know, the girl might be kind of weirded out. If you have a bunch of little girls, let's say you not only play with this little girl doll, but you also play with Barbies and you also play with like Raggedy Ann. That's kind of weird. That starts looking like a motif.
Okay.
But if it's the only thing, and you're like, look, I know it's kind of weird. I play with little girl dolls. Then yeah, your wife shouldn't be weirded out by that. Like, people have their own tastes. I get that. You know, I 100% get that. People are saying like, hey, like your Twitter picture, there's like basketball and football cards visible in the picture. Yeah, but I'm not putting them forward. And for one thing, those are grown men pictured. It's not like a little girl, but forget that. Tastes are different. I'm trying to be open-minded here. I'm not putting any of that forward as like universal art for the church. People didn't even like when, because I was sponsored by a skate company, because I used to be a good skateboarder. People didn't even like on the bottom of a skateboard. I mean, think about this. Think of how this squares. A literal holy image. They didn't like a holy image on the bottom of a skateboard. And again, I would always cite Council of Constantinople 2 or 3, I'm forgetting, against the iconoclasts. The official language of the church says, no, you can worship to God or venerate, because it is Holy Mary, through some object that you're not worshiping the object. The object can get dirty. It can get soiled. I mean, Constantinople Council says this. You can get soiled because you're not soiling Mary herself. It's just the object, wherever it is. If you have a Virgin Mary on a pair of socks, you're not sweating on the Virgin Mary. It's literally the teaching from that 6th or 7th Ecumenical Council against the iconoclasts. It's holy and good insofar as it bulwarks the moral imagination, the phantasms, helps us to more vividly represent holy men and women to our intellects. Okay, but people didn't even like that. People were lots of folks were like, why should this be on a skateboard? They're saying, look, I was a skateboarder. I was sponsored by a skate company. I used, what I literally did was I gave to that skate company the image that I wanted Sophia to use on the cover of my first book. And I was like, this is my image. I came up with it. I had, I'm not a graphic artist. I had a dream of this thing. I had someone come up with it. And I was like, hey, when Milo published my first book, I was like, could we use this? And he was like, I'll do something similar. He didn't want to use exactly that. And then when Sophia printed the second edition, they were like, we'll do something more similar to what the Dangerous Books Milo cover looked like. So I still had this sort of cartoonized thing that I ended up giving to that skate company when they sponsored me. That was a holy image. That wasn't like, that's not what this is. People were mad at that. My legitimate attempt to have depicted a holy image on a secular kind of surface, on a mug. Do you have any mugs with the Virgin Mary? You're not washing her or drowning her because Council of Constantinople against the iconoclasts. That's not what's happening. You're not worshiping the image itself. So I'm not claiming anyone of idolatry here. I'm just saying, why is this secular image for little girls, Japanese little girls, being made to stand for me and the people that are even, significantly older than me? It just doesn't make any sense. So I was just going to come on here and shit on this, like white people should like white people art, not like Japanese cartoons for groomers. Okay. That's whatever. It's funny. That stings a bit. But now I'm trying to present some more legit arguments for the way that we were conceiving of this next huge embarrassing failure from the Vatican. Because there's just an endless torrent of huge embarrassing failures from the Vatican. But really they're successes given what I think their goals are, to drag the church down off of its cloud. So I like fun too. The trads get mad at me because they think that I've indulged in too much fun. I've mentioned, lo and behold, I love Stranger Things. I mentioned we watched the Harry Potter movies with our families.
We're going trick-or-treating tomorrow.
We're going trick-or-treating, dressing as monsters and scary shit. We are a very not anathema to fun clan here, Clan Gordon. But I'm saying that at the very most restrained criticism I can offer is it's not the time or the place for Lupe or Luce, whatever it is. It's not the place for Japanime. And I would significantly alter, if I were you, I would in all sincerity offer this up. If you're 24, 25 and you're attached to the notion of little girl art, little girl tchotchkes, little girl dolls, whatever it's called, think how much time, I mean, you can do that. You can do that and be married and you can hold on to that. But if you don't yet have a woman, if you haven't yet even approached a woman in real life, you are the novelty in human history. It is not normal to be 24, and I think it's like 48 or maybe it's 58% of 24-year-old American males have never approached a girl in real life. That is shocking. And I think that's more the talking about. I think maybe it's not so much a church question as a sociological divide that underlies this issue. Time is finite. Principle of scarcity abides. Opportunity cost matters. I want all these young men out there to find one girl that's great for them, that they can go make a happy, healthy, safe, holy, above all things, family with. And you gotta get out of doors to do that. We cover everything? I think that's it. So trying to be a little charitable at the end, but come on. Let's just get real. If you have to ask, you'll never know. We all know this is something of a psyop. God bless you guys. Happy Hallowtide, the autumnal triduum of Halloween, All Saints and All Souls. Remember, All Saints is obligation day, so don't forget to go. It's one of the easy ones to forget if you're in a candy-induced stupor the next day after taking your kids out or going out. Again, I've never missed trick-or-treating 1 year, I don't think. maybe when we were in Rome, living in Rome, but we kind of tried to do a trick-or-treat thing there. Love a lot of fun here. God bless you all. Happy Halloween. Deus Volt.